All right, here we are, January 23, 2020, doing another one of these Friday 10 a.m. Pacific Q&As. Last time I uploaded the audio of the Q&A to my podcast feed so you guys could listen to it afterwards. That was a request that I had gotten from several people, and I hope you liked it. I have been trying to do more podcasts. As always, you can watch those on YouTube because I record them as video, and then I put the audio up. And yeah, I may start trying to do a different format for this Q&A. I really like the Q&A because I'm not always clued in to what it is that you guys want to know, so it helps. But I'm not convinced that it necessarily needs to be live. And I don't know that that's the best kind of format for this. So I'm thinking maybe it's better if I take questions beforehand. Like I've been putting a Q&A sticker in my Instagram stories so that people can give questions, which I've been answering here. But perhaps the best thing is to take questions in the comments of these Q&As and on Instagram, and then just kind of curate 3, 4, or 5 of them each week and actually just record a whole video. And that way I get time to think a little bit more, curate the questions a little bit more. I think it may be a good product. I'm not sure that there's a value in actually doing this live. If you guys have an opinion on that, I'm totally open to hearing it. So anyway, let's get started. I've got a couple here on Instagram that I'll start with. Actually, no, let's start with a wrist check. So today I'm wearing this MB&F LM2, which is just an awesome watch. This one's in rose gold. It's on my website right now. It's pretty awesome. I don't know if you can really see it on this front camera, but it's pretty dope. Anyway, cool. Let's go into a couple of these Instagram questions. So this first one is, do I think box and papers is always essential when buying secondhand? And this is like a question after my own heart. I hate the whole box and papers thing in the watch industry. It's one of the most annoying things to me. It's kind of like it's a thing only because it's a thing, but it's the amount wasted of shipping these boxes all over the place and storing them and whatever is just insane. And they're stupid. I don't think anybody uses the boxes. They all go in the closet. The papers mean nothing. They're warranty papers that expire. So they're just papers of expired warranty. And yet oftentimes they can be worth thousands of dollars of a difference to have or not to have. So to me personally, if I were buying a watch for myself, I would much rather save the money, screw the box and papers, save the money and just get the watch. That's all that matters anyway. However, there's no denying the fact that box and papers are a thing in the market. They just are what they are. And so we have no choice but to price things accordingly and to realize that things are less liquid if they don't have box and papers and whatnot. But I think it's a ridiculous thing. And absolutely, if you want to save some money by buying without box and papers, go for it. This is, am I interested in high-end quartz watches like a Citizen? I guess sort of. I'm not like that technically interested. So I'm not an expert in the mechanics of this sort of thing. I have a Rolex Oyster Quartz in my personal collection that I love. One of my weird kind of guilty pleasures is I really like the wood dialed presidents. So I have a regular automatic one that's like beautiful, beautiful, perfect with the wood dial. And then I also have an Oyster Quartz version with the wood dial. So I have those. I don't know if you would consider spring drive in this kind of high-end quartz watch. It's not really quartz, but it's also not really not. But I think those are really cool too. So I guess I'm not against them, but I'm not super into them personally either. What's the most pedantic thing about collectors in my experience is the question here. That's funny. This is a little bit of a tricky part of my business because I deal with a lot of different types of people. And some people are super into details and some are not that into details. And one of the trickiest things is that I am personally not that into the little details. So just like I don't really care about box and papers, I also don't care about a little bit of minor wear on a watch or that sort of thing. At the same time, I have to somehow be in tune with what it is that my customers want. And so this is why it really helps to have a little bit of longer term relationships with customers. I do a lot of repeat business, and eventually you just sort of know, like, okay, this guy, to this one guy, this is a mint watch. To this other guy, he's going to be really bugged about this like super, super tiny little thing here. So that just takes a level of sensitivity that you get over time and over multiple deals with people. So I don't know. I try not to judge. It's like all these things are expensive, and if there's a certain thing that's going to bother somebody about something, then it's their right to be bothered by it, I suppose. Sometimes people go so far that they're just kind of never going to be happy with anything, but that's kind of on them. There's nothing I can so much do about that other than just try to give them full disclosure on everything that I have in. But if you want to say the most pedantic, I would go back to the box and papers thing, just the in general thing in the watch industry, because this is not just specific to a few people. This is the whole thing that we've all created and continue to create, that there's some importance to these boxes that no one cares about and these expired warranty papers. That is probably the most annoying thing to me. I think we'd all be much better off if we didn't care about that stuff. So this is a follow-up here. It's, do I not care about box and papers because I can deem authenticity from my experience in the high-end space? Yeah, I think that's probably the case. Obviously, in certain things, then provenance becomes really important. Box and papers are part of that provenance, right? So in certain areas where there's a lot of like monkey business, that's a good thing to know. But if you take, for example, like this LM2 on my wrist, this has everything. I have an LM1 in my inventory. It doesn't have box and papers. Now, because of that, I can sell it for thousands of dollars less than I recently sold one that does have box and papers. And I know the provenance. Like, I know Max. I texted him when I bought the watch. I said, hey, will you check this serial number? Is it all good? He did. It's fine. The watch is checked out. It has, I would argue that that watch now has even more provenance because it's gone through my hands, who's very close to the company, been checked out by Max, versus a random watch that does have box and papers. So, you know, in this space, nobody's going to fake an LM2. It is very obviously what it is. Checking the serial number to make sure it's not stolen or something like that, I think is very important to do. And to buy from a reputable dealer who you know that you have, you know, is going to check those things out, and also you'd have recourse. Yeah, so maybe it is, to be fair, a little bit more particular to my area and my space that I think boxes and papers are ridiculous, but my opinion stands. What's my opinion on manufacturer movements? Do you need to have them, or is it okay to modify an existing model? So this is a good question. And this goes back to, I think anybody having this discussion is coming a little bit too late on the chain. You need to back up one step to evaluating a watch for what it is. So I've talked about this lots of times. It's a big topic of my podcast. It used to be a topic on my blog all the time when I had this. And that's sort of like what makes a good watch. And to me, a good watch is something that had a kind of a strong point of view. It is attempting to do something, and then it does it very well. And whether it uses a manufacturer movement or not is sort of a means to an end in that, right? Like if you're saying that the whole point of a watch is the handcraft and the mechanism and the whatever, then maybe the value in that lies in it having a manufacturer movement, right? However, if you look at a brand, maybe like Urwerk, for example, where what makes an Urwerk interesting is their design. It's the actual time-telling mechanism. It's things like that. Where they actually get the part of the movement that is keeping the rate is not so important. I don't want my Urwerks to all be $300,000 because they reinvented that, which works perfectly. They can just take a very good movement and then put their module or whatever on it that does their kind of Urwerky thing, right? So yeah, I hope that answers that. I would, anytime you get into these more, well, as it was said before, a little bit more pedantic arguments, I think it usually means that you've gone too far and you need to back up and look at what is this watch trying to be? Where is the value in this watch? And did the brand achieve what they were setting out to? Is what they're saying the value of this watch is it actually backed up in the product? And that doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be a manufacturer movement. Or on the other hand, you could say the same thing for high finish. It doesn't mean that everything has to be finished to the nines. I don't think it would make any sense to put a Kari Voutilainen level of finish on a Rolex Submariner movement and then make that watch $70,000. It's a silly thing because that's not why the Submariner exists. So if you start thinking of things in those terms, I think they make these discussions a lot easier. Okay, let's see what else we've got here. I like this one. Who is the coolest person in the watch industry, and why is it Max B? I like a question that answers itself in its own question. That's funny. The watch industry is definitely not full of cool people. We're all nerds. I always try to explain people. Most of my friends or people that I run into, they don't know what I do and they don't really understand this world. Steve, what do you do? I tell them, the watches are really expensive, and they think that I'm selling to all these cool people. And I try to explain that the reality is that we're mostly just all nerds that are into really nerdy things. But Max is definitely super cool. Wei Ko, very, very cool. I mean, this is like a fashion dude. He is a real raconteur. And there are definitely some characters around the watch industry. Max is always cool to me because he's just a really brilliant guy and has been a big influence on me and really like a mentor in a lot of ways. And then a lot of it is just is a little bit tricky because the kind of basic language of the watch industry is French, and I don't speak French. So there are certain people that I just can't communicate with as well as I would like to, and I don't get a chance to see how cool they really are or are not, which is a bummer. This is any thoughts on complicated Atmos clocks? I got the same question on Instagram. It's probably from the same guy. If you look over my shoulder here, there's my Atmos. It's only got a moon phase, and I guess it's got a kind of month ring. It's not super complicated, but I love Atmos clocks. I think it's one of the coolest things in the watch industry. The fact that this clock, I mean, it just lives on my shelf. I never touch it. It's always on time, and it doesn't have a battery. How cool is that? And they can really be picked up for very reasonable money, because they've been making them forever, and there's a million different versions of them. And as long as you make sure that they're well cared for, they kind of last for a really, really long time. There's a lot of people who specialize in fixing them so they can be fixed up. So I'm a huge fan of Atmos clocks. I wish I had more of them. I'd love to have one of the Mark Newson ones, or that the Hermes one is amazing. For now, my little kind of normal one is enough for me. But yeah, I'm a huge fan. Let's see. Opinion about auctions. Why would someone buy a modern watch readily available on the market for a bigger price when you factor in the 20 to 25% buyer premium? I have no idea. Auctions constantly are perplexing me. I see watches that sell for more than I have them advertised for, and then the buyers get less than what I would readily just wire somebody for, and yet they also have to wait for months on the thing. Yeah, a lot of times they make no sense to me, and I don't know. I don't know what I'm missing. I don't know what happens. I've talked about this various times, but you're absolutely right. There's something kind of weird that goes on. So there's a lot of questions that are thoughts on specific models or specific brands. I kind of try to avoid these a little bit more. I don't think I have necessarily interesting opinions aside from my opinions that are very clear. So I'll state those, and they can be kind of generalized. I vote with my money. I own my inventory. I buy these watches. The reason why I stock very few brands and why I kind of buy the same things are because that's the stuff that I really love. So if you want to look at what stuff I love and think is great, all you have to do is look at my site, ticktalking.com, look at what I have in inventory or the things that I've sold, and you will see that's the stuff that I think is good. In terms of different models, really, once you get into these areas that are good, there's a question here about a couple de Bethunes. They're all really great. It's just kind of personal preference within there. Now, I have ones that I may like more. You may like another one more, but what my opinion shouldn't really matter there. It's between two great watches, you should buy which one you like. Now, if you're going to come and you say, Steve, should I buy a de Bethune or should I buy a Franck Villa or something? I'll say, buy the de Bethune. Absolutely. That's the good stuff. That's where the good stuff is. But if it's between a DB28 or DB28 Grand Sport, Grand Blue or whatever, I would say, buy whichever one you like better. And I don't know. I think a lot of the fun of this industry, which is kind of what I talked about in my podcast this week, which was on quality over quantity and kind of honing your taste, is the ability to figure out your own taste, what you think is good for you, what you value. And so I try not to step in the way of that too much, except where I have a very broad point of view, which is that the real value in this industry lies with independent watches, with actual creators who are trying to make great stuff, and they're putting their lives on the line to make these amazing products versus these bigger brands that are just kind of creating more and more stuff to keep their bottom line going. That's my overarching theme. That's the thing I care. That's what I want to kind of evangelize and bring as much light to this area as I can. Within that area, I don't really care to pick favorites or point people in one direction or the other, because again, That's my personal taste. I don't know if most of you would wear this white t-shirt or this like kind of denim Kamigata jacket, or, you know, I'm not giving fashion advice here. So wear what you want and buy what you want, but buy the really good stuff that keeps the industry making good stuff. That's my main 2 cents here. Maybe that's actually a good place to cut it. I'm going to keep these questions. I've jotted a couple of them down. I have a couple of the questions from Instagram also that I've jotted down. I think that I'm going to stop doing this live Q&A, as I mentioned in the beginning, unless I get a bunch of outpour that you guys really love the live Q&A. But I think otherwise I'd prefer to have you submit questions. You can put them right in the comments of this video because they go up. You can always email me. I'm just steve@ticktalking.com or stevehalleck@gmail.com. And or you can contact me through my website, or you can, I'll keep putting these kind of Q&A stickers on Instagram where you can submit questions. And then what I'm going to do is just kind of filter out for some that I think are interesting and think about them a little bit deeper, and then film actual Q&A videos that I can put out every week. So I think that's going to be a better format than doing this live. But if you feel really strongly about it, then let me know. Anyway, thanks a lot, guys. And I will be back here next week. Have a great weekend.